So I was coming off an incredible bender of alcohol and cocaine, and I had crawled into an AA meeting in Western Maryland and crawled out, and it was the first time. Now I had had suicidal ideations in the past, but what differentiated this particular time is that I felt like I knew that there were other people that had felt exactly like I did at that moment and had chosen to go through with it. I was maybe a half mile from the Potomac Bridge that connected West Virginia and Maryland, and I thought about it, and then this voice popped into my head, and it said, "Wait 3 days. You'll feel better in 3 days." So I did. And 3 days later, I was in Jan's office. Now, just 2 days prior to that, my mother had come downstairs while I was getting ready to go play adjunct instructor at the local community college that I taught at. And she said, "Do you want to talk to someone?" And I was like, "Sure." I had tried therapy a couple of times. The first time in 10th grade, I had this guy that I talked to for a while, and his therapeutic advice all seemed to stem from the Patrick Swayze movie Roadhouse. He was this little guy from the Bronx, and he said, "Mike, what you gotta do is you gotta find your inner Buddhist bouncer." My second time was my senior year of college, and within 10 minutes of the first meeting, the guy fell asleep. So I was done. The other people that had come along since that time were all substance abuse counselors, and they all wanted me to quit the one thing that gave me any sense of well-being. And now my mother wanted me to go speak to the pastor at her church. She's like, "I know what you're going to say, but I'm telling you, she's really progressive. A lot of the congregation thinks she's a maverick." And I was like, "Well, good. Coincidentally enough, I feel like Goose in an air wash." It's Top Gun. It's a movie, Mother. So I went, and I was sitting across from Jan, and immediately I didn't feel any sort of pretense. She just felt like this older friend that I had, and she said, "So you're having some trouble. You want to talk about it?" And this feeling came over me, and it was one part, "Okay, preacher lady, you want to hear some things?" And it was like another part of Chunk at the blender in the movie Goonies when the Tortelli brother says, "Spill your guts, kid. Tell us everything." So I started to tell her. I said, "Well, I start drinking vodka when I get off work, and then I have a cocaine dealer who's very attentive, and I call him. And then I keep drinking, and then I call some girls that also I know like to do cocaine, and sometimes there's sex, and then there's sometimes I don't remember, and then there's one time I think it was a girl, but I think it was a guy, and I might have had sex, and I might have liked it, but I'm not sure, and now I have any moment of sobriety, I just have these obsessive thoughts because of the sex that I had with the one girl, but it was probably a guy. I'm pretty sure now I have HIV. And then Jan said something that was so wonderful and so simple. She said, "Michael, that was pretty kinky." And I love that. She had this special way of making me look at things that I still hold on to this day. One time after I was telling her, like, what a piece of shit I thought I was, she said, "Why do you talk about yourself that way?" And I said, "Well, I come from a sports background, so I picture her like I'm this hard-nosed, take-no-nonsense kind of coach, get in your face and tell it like it is." She said, "Oh, how's that working out for you?" No, it's not. But what she did was she cultivated this place where there was no judgment, there was no shame, there was no guilt. You know, I felt okay to like talk about this confusion and this anger and this sadness that I've been holding on to all these years over being raped by this one guy in my neighborhood when I was 8 over multiple occasions. That it was understandable that I would be feel like I had missed out on a part of my childhood and adolescence because while everyone else was like playing, I wasn't present. I was there, but I was wrapped up in these obsessive thoughts. And that most of the sadness that I was like really carrying around with me was anger. And she brought it out. One day she looked at me and she goes, "I can tell you just want to let it out. Just what is it?" And I said, "All right, you know what? I'm pissed off at God." And she said, I get that way. And I said, "I feel like I'm like on the other end of this cosmic joke because this one time I reach out to the one other person about this whole thing that happened to me. And it was a family doctor. And he said, 'Hey man, it happens.' And he proceeds to try to relate to me with this story about being on a fishing trip with 5 other doctors, and 3 of them had all shared stories about getting molested. And she said, 'Yeah, that's understandable.' And I said, 'So I'm pissed off. You know, I get so wrapped up in it, and then the cherry on top of it is I come downstairs a few weeks ago, and I open up the front page of the newspaper, and the guy has been arrested for molesting his patients.'" And she took a beat, and in her just magnificent way, she said, "Michael, you're a writer, correct?" I'm like, "Yes, I am." She said, "I gotta admit, this would make a great book." I said, "I know, but I'm too lazy to write one." She kept me on the tracks for a good while, as long as I needed to be on them. She took me on as pro bono. And she said, "Well, it's part of my contract, and to be honest with you, Michael, you're never boring." She helped guide my parents and myself to get me into a treatment facility, the Caron Foundation in Western Pennsylvania, where I spent 4 months. And I haven't seen her since I left, because when I was done with Caron, I came back and moved straight to DC and did the intensive outpatient. And about 5 years ago, I'm a few years sober, and I start dating my now wife, and things start coming up, and I'm like, I gotta talk to somebody. Because I still have issues, and I'm always gonna have issues. And my current therapist, Patricia, I can't imagine, and in fact, I don't want a life where I can't go somewhere at least once a week and spill my guts.